In the early 17th century, the Netherlands was a global superpower. Its Dutch Golden Age was fueled by trade, innovation, and immense wealth. Canals glittered with the reflections of grand, gabled houses, each one a testament to the prosperity flowing into the city from across the globe. Dutch ships dominated the seas, establishing vast trade networks that stretched from Asia to the Americas, bringing exotic goods back home. Amidst the silks, spices, and porcelain, a new and delicate treasure arrived from the distant Ottoman Empire, the tulip. Initially, it was just another curiosity, a beautiful flower admired by botanists and wealthy collectors for its novelty and vibrant colors. Planted in the meticulously kept gardens of the Dutch elite, the tulip quickly became a powerful symbol of status and sophistication. Its simple, elegant form stood in stark contrast to the more common flowers of Europe, making it an object of intense fascination. Soon, owning rare tulips was no longer just a hobby. It was a way to display one's wealth and taste to the world. The demand for these beautiful flowers began to grow, but their bulbs took years to cultivate, creating a fundamental imbalance of supply and demand. This scarcity, combined with a society flush with cash and a love for speculation, created the perfect storm for what was to come. The most prized tulips were not the solid-colored varieties, but the broken tulips, which had stunning, flame-like streaks of color. What the Dutch didn't know was that this beautiful effect was the result of a mosaic virus that infected the bulb, creating unique patterns. Each broken tulip was one of a kind. The virus made them weaker and harder to propagate, which only increased their rarity and value. Varieties were given grand names like Viceroy or Admiral van der Eyck, turning them from mere flowers into branded luxury items. Botanists and artists alike were captivated, filling heavy catalogs with intricate, hand-painted illustrations of each unique and priceless bloom. These catalogs became wish books for aspiring collectors and speculators, showcasing flowers that most could only dream of owning. The unpredictability was part of the allure. Planting a bulb was a gamble. Nobody knew if it would produce a plain flower or a priceless masterpiece. This element of chance transformed gardening into a high-stakes game, attracting not just flower lovers, but also gamblers and investors. As the obsession grew, the actual flowers became secondary. The real trade was in the bulbs, the dormant promises of future beauty and wealth. The stage was now set. A beautiful, rare, and unpredictable commodity had captured the imagination of an entire nation ready to gamble. What began as a hobby for the elite quickly morphed into a full-blown speculative frenzy. The tulip market was born. In the taverns and coffee houses of Dutch cities, florists, as the traders were called, gathered to buy and sell tulip bulbs. Prices, initially measured in a few guilders, began to climb, first steadily, then with breathtaking speed, detached from any real-world value. People heard stories of neighbors making a fortune overnight. The fear of missing out became a powerful, intoxicating force. The trade wasn't just for the wealthy anymore. Soon, artisans, shopkeepers, and even servants began pooling their life savings to invest. Since the bulbs were dormant in winter, traders began dealing in promissory notes for bulbs to be delivered in the spring. This was one of history's first futures markets. People were trading paper promises, further disconnecting the price from the physical flower. A single note could be bought and sold multiple times a day, each time at a higher price, creating immense profits out of thin air. The entire economy seemed to reorient itself around this flower. Traditional businesses were neglected as everyone chased the easy money of the tulip trade. The belief was simple and powerful. Prices would always go up. No one stopped to ask what these bulbs were actually worth. By the winter of 1636, the speculation had escalated into a full-blown nationwide mania. Rationality had been completely abandoned. A single bulb of a desirable variety could be traded for goods worth thousands of guilders, the price of a skilled craftsman's entire annual income. One record shows a Viceroy bulb was exchanged for 2 loads of wheat, 4 oxen, 8 pigs, 12 sheep, and barrels of wine and beer. People began selling their most valuable assets. Homes, ancestral lands, and businesses were liquidated to acquire a single dormant bulb. They weren't buying a flower, they were buying a piece of the dream, a ticket to unimaginable wealth that seemed guaranteed. There's a famous, perhaps apocryphal story of a sailor who mistook a priceless bulb for an onion and ate it with his lunch. The story, true or not, illustrates the disconnect. To an outsider, it was just a root. To an insider, it was a fortune. The market was no longer about tulips. It was about psychology, greed, and the collective delusion that the price would rise forever. At its zenith, the price of a single rare bulb could surpass that of a grand townhouse on the most fashionable Amsterdam canal. A flower had become one of the most expensive objects on the planet, but this dizzying ascent could not last forever. At the absolute pinnacle of this madness was one tulip to rule them all, the legendary Semper Augustus. It was the holy grail for collectors. Its deep crimson flames on a stark white background were considered the peak of floral perfection. Only a handful of these bulbs were known to exist, making them the rarest and most sought-after commodity in the Netherlands. Owning one wasn't just a sign of wealth, it was a sign of ultimate victory in the great tulip game. At the height of the mania, a single Semper Augustus bulb was reportedly sold for 10,000 guilders. This was enough money to purchase a grand estate on the Amsterdam canals, complete with a coach and horses. Think about that. Not a field of flowers, not a business, but a single dormant bulb costing more than a mansion. The Semper Augustus became a myth, a legend. It represented the absolute peak of irrational exuberance and speculative desire. It was the ultimate prize in a market completely detached from reality, a beautiful symbol of a beautiful, dangerous bubble. And like all bubbles, it was fragile, shimmering, and destined to pop in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. The end came swiftly and without warning. In February 1637, at a routine tulip auction in the city of Haarlem, for the first time in months, a pricey bulb went up for sale, and no one would meet the asking price. A sudden, chilling silence fell. The auctioneer tried again, lowering the price. Still, there were no buyers. The spell was broken. Panic began to ripple through the room. News of the failed auction spread like wildfire. Suddenly, everyone wanted to sell, and nobody wanted to buy. The price of tulips plummeted. Bulbs that had been worth a fortune one day were worth a fraction of that the next. People who held contracts for bulbs at inflated prices were now facing ruin. Their paper fortunes had evaporated overnight. Traders who had promised to buy bulbs in the spring now defaulted on their agreements, refusing to pay the outrageous prices. The entire chain of credit and trust that had propped up the market collapsed. The mania turned into a contagion of fear. The government tried to intervene, offering to honor contracts at 10% of their face value, but it was too little, too late. The bubble had burst. All that was left was to survey the financial wreckage and wonder how it had all gone so wrong. In the wake of the crash, a wave of financial despair swept across the Netherlands. Fortunes built on paper were instantly erased. Merchants who had been wealthy just weeks before were now bankrupt, their assets seized to cover impossible debts. The middle and lower classes, who had gambled their life savings, were hit the hardest. Many were left with nothing. The courts were flooded with lawsuits as creditors tried to enforce the now worthless tulip contracts, but the system was overwhelmed. A deep sense of bitterness and recrimination set in. People searched for someone to blame for the collective madness. Satirical pamphlets and prints appeared, mocking the florists and their foolish obsession with a simple flower. The Dutch economy, while resilient, was shaken. The crash exposed the dangers of speculation and the fragility of a market built on belief alone. And what of the tulips? Once symbols of unimaginable wealth, their bulbs were now virtually worthless, left to rot in the ground. The flower that had captivated a nation and brought it to the brink of ruin returned to being just a flower. The mania was over, but its story would serve as a powerful cautionary tale for centuries to come. The classic story of Tulip Mania is one of national ruin. But is that the whole truth? Modern historians have begun to question the narrative. Much of what we know comes from satirical pamphlets published after the crash, which had an interest in exaggerating the foolishness. Some scholars, like historian Anne Goldgar, argue the mania was not a nationwide catastrophe, but was confined to a relatively small group. She suggests it was a network of wealthy merchants and skilled artisans playing a risky game, not a mass delusion of the entire populace. According to this view, the idea of people trading their homes was likely a dramatic exaggeration, not a common occurrence. Furthermore, since most trades were for future contracts, many of the huge sums were never actually paid when the defaults happened. This revisionist take doesn't deny the speculative bubble, but it reframes its scale. The Dutch economy itself did not collapse. The social and financial damage was real for the individuals involved, but it may not have been the widespread apocalypse of popular legend. So, was it a devastating crash or a contained financial drama? The truth likely lies somewhere in between the myth and the revision. What is undeniable, however, is that Tulip Mania became the archetypal story of a speculative bubble, a lesson for the ages. Regardless of its true scale, the story of Tulip Mania has echoed through history. It became the ultimate parable of market madness. Whenever a new asset captures the public imagination and its price soars, the ghost of the tulip is invoked. We saw it in the 18th century with the South Sea bubble in Britain, where shares in a trading company skyrocketed before crashing spectacularly. We saw it in the Roaring '20s, as irrational exuberance fueled a stock market boom that ended in the Great Crash of 1929. In the late 1990s, the dot-com bubble saw internet startups with no profits valued at billions, all based on promises of a new economy. More recently, the 2008 financial crisis was fueled by a bubble in the housing market, with complex derivatives replacing tulip contracts. Each time, the pattern is eerily similar: a new, exciting asset, easy credit, and a widespread belief that this time is different. Tulip Mania serves as the blueprint, a timeless lesson in human psychology, crowd behavior, and the intoxicating allure of getting rich quick. It reminds us that the line between investment and gambling can be perilously thin, and that value is often just a shared belief. The names and assets change, but the fundamental story of the bubble, its rise, its madness, and its inevitable fall, remains the same. Today, the Netherlands is still synonymous with tulips. The country is the world's largest producer, exporting billions of bulbs each year. The flowers are a cherished part of Dutch culture and a massive tourist attraction, their beauty now accessible to everyone. The broken tulips, once the source of the mania, are rarely cultivated. The virus that made them beautiful also made them weak. Modern striped varieties are the result of stable, deliberate breeding, not the beautiful, random chaos of a viral infection. The flower's value has returned to something intrinsic, its simple, profound beauty, rather than a speculative price tag. Tulip Mania stands as a stark reminder that the value of an object is often a story we tell ourselves. It's a story of how a society can, for a moment, collectively agree that a flower is worth more than a house. It forces us to ask, what gives anything value? Is it rarity, beauty, utility, or simply the belief that someone else will pay more for it tomorrow? The mania is long over, and the fortunes are long gone, but the tulips return every spring, beautiful and silent. They remain a quiet, colorful monument to one of the strangest and most fascinating chapters in financial history.